Adrian, you there? Can you hear
I
me?
am. I am. Yeah, I think you're on a little spotty internet connection. We're gonna try our best here.
Yeah. I'm not going to name any names, but certain internet service providers just don't are the best all the time. It's not a constant data stream like ours, hopefully.
Technology's not perfect, but thanks for. I have a quick few minutes here. It's been a little crazy these past few weeks, but I'm happy to take a break here and jump on and discuss a very important topic. So.
Yeah. And today we're going to talk about, ransomware. And again, everyone's probably pretty familiar with it, but we're seeing a lot more activity. And so that's why I'm glad you could be available, Adrian, for this live stream. I know you've been busy on calls with certain clients, even companies reaching out to us because they don't really understand how to respond, what to do. And so, what we want to talk about today is into search last
Oh,
year in 2021.
your connection is dropping off, Mike. So
Again,
yeah, it's dropping off. If you can connect back, just do it. If not, I'll take it from here. All right, looks like we lost Mike for a second, but so hey everybody, my name's Adrian. I know Mike usually runs these. He's having a little technical difficulties, but I'll just run forward on it. And we're going to make this one brief. I mean, quite honestly, we had this planned as part of a regular data stream agendas, and the timing couldn't be any more spooky, if you will. But for those of you who don't know, a few weeks ago, this whole Russia controversy and everything, the FBI had put out a warning out to the public and also to businesses to be on heightened alert for cyber attacks, ransomware specifically. And we've definitely noticed that. And in fact, this week, the federal government itself has put the same sort of even heightened alerts out to the U.S. small business community. Small businesses is really considered anywhere from, your sole proprietor to 1,000 employees, right? We count as small businesses. So unfortunately, we have definitely seen that to be the case. Just in the last few weeks, I have been directly involved in 6 cases. A couple have been some of our clients who help recover. But as Mike alluded to, we've had others that reach out to us for support. And so what we want to talk about real quick is just to give you some quick stats. Again, these are obviously fading behind. I'm sure the stats we're going to have in a few months will increase from there. But just from 2020 to 2021, there was basically a double, 104% increase in cyber threats across North America. Now, remember, a lot of these type of deals, and that is a SonicWall cyber threat report itself. A lot of these are only what's reported, where we have to remember that. A lot of threats, and I can tell you I'm involved in some, aren't all reported to the FBI themselves. So a lot of these stats will come from like FBI, or they'll come from SonicWall. Another thing is the misconception that it only affects certain industries, maybe only large companies or very small businesses or sole proprietors, or maybe even just people at home. But the reality is that the biggest threats that we saw last year, according to a report from IBM itself, was in the manufacturing industry, and we definitely see that. Again, if you're not in manufacturing, we see it in others. But manufacturing are a huge target. And there's a few reasons for that. One, they deal typically with large invoices, large volumes, large finances. If they do heavy capital equipment purchases, things of that nature. The other thing too is that they are super connected with vendors, right? They have a large amount of customers, they have vendors, there's a lot of moving parts, large number of employees. And so they are typically a successful attack, for these attackers. So we really want to outline today. The whole goal was, and Mike, if you're on, you can join back in. It looks like his internet's come back, so feel free to jump back in.
Am I in here? Can you hear me?
You are. You're back. I know I'm not going to name your name. We know what provider you have, but it looks like you have an issue today.
I thought third time's the charm. This is our 3rd episode.
Yeah, it is, but we're getting down. What we're going to do is really talk about, I know Mike, you had outlined, and I'm reading an outline that we've put together, is this segment is how are the stages of ransomware affected, right? What are you going to see yourself moving through if for some reason something like this happens, right? Mike, I don't know if you're frozen again or just looking at me funny. I think you're frozen. And he's frozen. Oh man, we gotta love internet sometimes. So obviously the very first step of a ransomware attack, and we can have a whole talk on prevention. We're talking about when this happens, what do we see happen, right? There's a point infection, and most of the time, right, 90+% of the time, it has to do with a phishing attempt, and a lot of that comes through emails, majority, but also don't forget text messages, social media posts, anywhere they can trick you or your staff, your employee, on clicking a link to download or to infiltrate some malicious type of software onto your systems, right? So what a lot of people don't understand is the initial infection point is typically not when you know you have ransomware, right? What they'll do is they'll, when I say they, I'm talking about the threat actor, the cyber criminal. What they want to do is have a point of infection, and it can be just an individual computer. And a lot of times you don't know that you have an infection going on. Antivirus, unfortunately, is not foolproof and is really not designed to catch some of these small payloads, as we call them, that they go through. And if you don't have something like an advanced EDR, advanced next-gen antivirus, or foothold detection, you may not even know that's on your network. And so really that stage of infection goes into infiltration of the rest of your network, right? They're going to see from that computer, can they gain any access? And again, we can have tons, and we will have multiple segments about how to protect from this. But in most cases, as we're seeing, they're able to get to other parts of the network, other computers, and in the worst case, they can get to the servers. Once they do that, they have a good understanding. Okay, here's the makeup of the network. Here's where our servers are at. Here's the rest of the computers. Potentially, and we've seen this too, unfortunately, they can see where the backups are. And so if you have backups on site in your building, they can sometimes be easier to get to. And do you have backups in the cloud? Hopefully those are segregated in a different network. Once the attacker has that, and they've made that point of entry, they made the infection, they have a good idea of what we call the landscape of your network, and they have an idea of where your data and your sensitive data is, they're going to start hijacking that. And that's when typically you, as the business or the employee in the business, are going to notice all of your files will be encrypted, right? You'll try to open them, and in every folder, there'll be a little README file that tells you, you've been encrypted. Here's our demand. And typically they're going to ask for X amount of Bitcoin. And depending on their sophistication, they may also have encrypted the backups. So we've seen that in multiple cases in the last couple of years. Typically there's the IT team. Okay, we understand we have a ransomware. Let's stop everything. Let's go to our backups, make sure they're secure. Then they find out that the backups have been encrypted too. So there's some pretty technical tips that we can give you. I don't have time to go through that on this stream, but if you're in IT, definitely reach out to you. There's definitely do's and don'ts when an infection happens, right? You do not want to start logging into different systems to check, like your backups, from a Windows computer on your domain. Right? That's a big no-no because sometimes you can actually help them spread that infection. But again, if you have questions, reach out to us. And so that's essentially that first phase of what you're going to see during an attack, right? That infection process, they're going to hijack the data, and then they're going to make those ransomware demands. Something important to remember too is a lot of us in the industry have thought, well, I've got great backups. So if we get ransomware, no big deal, we'll roll back. And that's typically what we've done, right? And we've recovered successfully. If you have data on your network that is sensitive, so if we're talking law firms, we're talking manufacturers that have potential intellectual property, maybe you have client data, you have employee data, right, from an HR perspective. And so that pretty much covers most companies. Just depends on the level of sensitivity you have and what we call PII, personal identifiable information. What these attackers are doing today is they've gotten smart. You have to remember, it's a business. If they not only want to make money on helping you decrypt your data, and so for those of you that don't know, when they encrypt your data, they're asking for money, and in exchange, they're going to give you a decryption key so you can actually access your data. Now they're taking it a step further. In the recent year or two, we see a lot more exploitation hits. So what they're going to do is say, hey, if we now have your data in our hands, and they'll show you a little bit of proof, if you don't pay us the ransom or our demands, we're going to exploit this data on the dark web, potentially send to your contacts, clients, vendors, right? Not a good thing, and that could have potential legal consequences, and at the very least, reputation consequences. So something to keep in mind. I know it's scary. It's just the reality of what's going on. So what the next segment that we're going to talk about here to close up is, what do you do, right? I just explained to you what an attack looks like, being on the inside. What are the symptoms you're going to see? But what do you do? Well, first off, the first thing you should do immediately, and hopefully you have this, is contact your insurance company. You need to have a dedicated cybersecurity, a cyber liability policy.
Team. Yeah.
Yeah. And so if and this is a misconception, I'm not an insurance expert, but I've been involved enough in this to witness the differences. If you have just a general business liability and you just have an add-on for cyber, I would strongly recommend to contact your insurance company and talk about the differences. You want a dedicated policy that's going to cover you. So if you have that in place, step one, call your insurance company and let them know you've had a breach. Immediately, they're going to come into action and they're going to start assisting, right? Even for clients of ours that we handle everything, you want that extra support, right? You want, they're going to bring in a forensics team, right, to try to understand what happened. And that's going to help your insurance cover any possible damages that you're going to incur. They're going to bring in a negotiation team. There are companies that do nothing but negotiate with these threat actors, right? If you do need to pay, they can hopefully make it less of a damage for you. And again, that's in your best interest and the insurance company's interest. They're going to help and bring in a recovery team, right? There's times we're working on restoring a backup. You may need to re-image 300 computers, right? So they can bring in those temporary resources. I mean, it's just feet on the ground to be able to recover as quickly as possible. So you really can take advantage of that policy. That's what you have it in place for. Next thing is, of course, you want to contact all your IT resources. So if it's a company you work for like us, you contact us, get them involved, contact your attorneys, right? So as you're seeing here, there's a lot of things. You want to have these written down. We call it incident response plan. And we're learning this as we go too, even internally. We need a better incident response plan. What do we do if something like this happens? And that team is going to help you, decide, okay, what do our backups look like? Can we recover? Do we need to even, in my personal opinion, I would rather recover and not even deal with the threat actor at all. But in some cases, depending on the situation, you may have to use that negotiation team. And again, we don't want to get too technical for the purposes of this call, but then we'll start the recovery process, which essentially is, in the best case scenario, recovering from clean backups. We want to make sure those backups are clean. Remember, I told you earlier that a lot of times the infection point can be way before the time they actually encrypt your data or hijack. So that could be weeks. And, typically we see an average of a month to 6 week period where the attacker's actually been in your network. You just don't know it yet. So we want to try to track that and make sure we recover from before that point. Or if we recover within that point, everything is locked down to where they're no longer a threat. And what's the reason for forensics besides your insurance company wanting to know what happens, that they'll cover the damages? We want to learn what happened, right? Unfortunately, this is the reality. We can put as many defenses we want in place, and that's good. It's a good thing, right? We're proponents of that, of course, but you can never be 100% protected. That's just a fallacy, unfortunately, because it's continuously evolving, right? So as we can learn from attacks, we can then take that information as an industry, right? And that's why the FBI loves to have these things reported. They want to understand what's going on, potentially go after these perpetrators. But how did they get in, right? Was it a certain type of phishing attack? And thanks, Mike, just put this on the screen. That is, if you ever need to report, you want to go to IC3. That's what this link is essentially, but you want to go to ic3.gov. We've done other videos on that. But the last phase, again, is we want to understand what happened. We want to understand, how do you block this? Because we don't want you to be what's called a repeat customer, right? We have to remember these attackers are a business. If they find a weak point, and especially if you pay them, Mike, you're going to talk about this earlier before you dropped off. Fortunately, what we're seeing is there's a lot of companies, and I'll use an old case that was public, so I'm not picking on them, but like Hollywood Presbyterian Hospital, big case in the newspaper, they had to pay the ransom. And that to me tells me, they didn't have their backups in place, right?
Yeah. It's like Colonial Pipeline too, Adrian.
Colonial Pipeline.
Another one. They had to pay the ransom. Luckily, because of the FBI, because it was such a high value type of attack and high profile, they were able to claw back some of that money. But
Yeah.
same thing.
Yeah. So it just keeps, unfortunately, keeps this industry going for these criminals. And so as people continue to pay, they're going to continue to do it. And so yeah, that essentially wraps up what I want to share. I know we're coming up 15 minutes. I definitely have a ton of work to get to, but any final questions, Mike, or anything else that we need to hit?
Well, the thing I want to talk about too, in terms of recovery or being a repeat customer, or what you were talking about, knowing what happened, the review process, right? What you want to make sure you do is you want to make sure that it's not affecting, or it's not reached out to your other clients, to your connections, because then they're looking for the biggest bang of the for the buck. And these cyber criminals now are finding ways to just get in and get to the other companies, other clients, because they have credentials that you might have on file. And so that's another big reason why you want to have that forensics and know where it started and where it ended.
Yeah, you bring up a
Because
good point. I mean, that's another huge, a lot of people ask, well, why are we getting phished? Odds are either your information is compromised in the dark web from somebody personally. They've leaked their credentials, but the big one is we all are connected in business, right? Between vendors, between clients, between partners. Um, you're getting emails all the time. So if they get infiltrated, if they have what's called business email compromise, a different topic than this stream. But if someone, let's say a vendor of yours gets their email compromised and they email me, it looks legitimate, right? I'm more likely to click on
mm-hmm.
that link. So if they've got it into your network, they're going to capitalize, like Mike said, and they're going to reach out to your contacts. It's kind of like the old chain letter scam, right? It's the same thing. So
Yeah, that's a good point. Good analogy. Um, yeah, outside of that, I mean, I think you covered the bases. You just want to make sure. Uh, since I dropped off, I was hearing it somewhat, Adrian, but you want to make sure that you contain it as soon as you know. So even, either you call your IT company after insurance, but you want to stop the attack and stop the spread as soon as you find out something's starting to get encrypted. You get an alert, what have you. You want to
yeah,
have that blueprint, like you were talking about. You want to build an incident response plan, and that's something we can help with, or we could just guide you and show you the certain resources to look for, so that you can create even a very basic checklist.
yeah,
It's just like anything else. You need to have a plan. If you don't have a plan, you don't know where to start.
yeah. And especially for those of you that might be watching that are in IT, you're an internal IT department, and we're working with a few of them right now. Reach out to us. We'll give you at least some tips. The things like I told you, not logging into your backups from a connected computer in the domain, even just segregating the network. As soon as something happens, like Mike said, it could be as simple. Hopefully, if you have some early detection systems, you can literally, some of those will do it automatically, but just
Mm-hmm.
you want to disconnect your systems from the internet, segment everything as much as possible as soon as you know about it, to at least stop that damage that's occurred. That
Right.
is, from an IT perspective, that's step one. From an executive level, step one is get in contact with your insurance company and your legal team.
Yeah,
IT
you want to.
team, start segmenting.
Right. You want to make sure that you're paying for your insurance. You want to make sure you get that coverage. And
Yep.
if you jump and do certain things, it might kind of cause conflict or controversy into getting that claim paid. Unfortunately, that's how
Yeah.
insurance works. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I think overall we kind of touched on all the different stages, how to respond. Uh, one thing I would point out too, you were talking about IT professionals. Um, what I'd recommend, if you're around the Inland Empire area, which is kind of San Bernardino, Riverside, Rancho Cucamonga, we're having a lunch and learn coming up in the beginning of April. It's on April 6th. And we're going to be talking about how to recover from ransomware and the different solutions out there. Datto, a popular or a very well known industry leader when it comes to backup technology, is helping sponsor the event. And that's a solution we recommend, we partner with. They're going to be doing a live demo of our actual ransomware attack and how easily you could recover. once you talk to your insurance, of course, right, Adrian, as we're learning.
Yeah,
Sometimes they don't want you to do the recovery until they get all the forensics. Um,
that's a good point. Yeah, that's a good point.
yeah, and so uh, we welcome anyone to come out. Seats are limited and they are filling up. We've kind of been talking about this event since the beginning of March, but there are still a few seats left, and it's just going to be a fun time. It's at Fleming's in Rancho Cucamonga, over by Victoria Gardens, if you're familiar. And what we're going to be doing is, again, talking about ransomware, how to recover it, how to recover from a disaster, overall. And it's going to be more of a technical side of training. We want IT directors, IT professionals to attend. Maybe they're looking for a new solution. Maybe they just want to kind of make sure and validate that what backup process or what backup solution they have in place still meets the parameters of what you want. So I highly encourage it. I'm going to share my screen real quick.
And just to
Uh,
add to that, Mike, just for any of you watching, like if you're in IT, I've actually been working with data for a long time, but I've seen this type of demo before. It's pretty awesome. I mean, and I don't know if they're going to do it this time, but they're actually coming out to us. We have some engineers from Datto, and they'll literally encrypt and infect the machine, and they'll destroy it right there. It's pretty interesting to see, uh, and then how they recover from that.
Yeah, and we're making fun of it. It's going to be a main event. It's basically you, the IT guy, versus ransom.
Mhm.
And the other thing I can throw out there, if you can attend, there's a chance to win this stand-up Street Fighter 2 arcade game. That's our grand raffle prize. And
That's
so if
awesome.
you want to do that, I'm going to put it here as well. You can sign up. It's on Eventbrite. Here's the link if you're watching today. If not, just go to Eventbrite, look up events in the Rancho Cucamonga area, and feel free to sign up. And if you have any questions, you can always hit us up too on zetasky.com. Reach out to us, and we can take a look at your systems and get a better understanding of how prepared you are for when ransomware attacks, because it's not an if, it's a when. And I hate using that cliche, but it's the truth.
It is. It
So,
is.
but yeah, so I mean, well, of course, right at the end, right? Everything's smooth. I'm
Your,
talking. I'm not
your,
freezing up.
your internet's been great now, Mike. It was just picking on you.
Here's the age old fix, right? Restart, reboot.
Yeah, we know that.
I guess my laptop was just struggling this morning. It didn't get enough coffee. So I've
Or
got
it,
enough, but
or it got
hey,
too much. You don't want to spill coffee on your laptop. Not a good thing.
no,
All right, guys. I'm going to
no.
sign off here soon. I got to get back to a bunch of work. So,
Yeah, and I just want to remind everyone, we're on YouTube, we're on LinkedIn, we're also on Facebook for these live stream events. Definitely come take a look at us, like, subscribe, hit the channel. We'll be doing another one in April outside of the Lunch and Learn event. We're going to be doing focusing on Microsoft Teams. A lot of companies have it. You have a Office 365 or Microsoft 365 subscription, but you're really not using Teams. And so we're going to kind of talk about that and how you can incorporate that easily, slowly adopt it, and then see the benefits. We use it every day. It's not just chat, it's sharing documents. So we're going to touch on some of those points, and hopefully, you gain an understanding, and your company, if you're watching, will learn how to set it up, how to utilize it, so that you're actually taking advantage of it, because it's gone leaps and bounds from the beginning of Teams and what used to be Skype. So, anyways, if you have any questions, again, just hit us up. We like to answer any questions you might have. Also, any suggestions for our live stream. We're doing it now once a month, but I see it in the future. We'll do it bi weekly, and who knows, we'll be up to a point where we can do this weekly. But we always want to bring out education, and we just want to illuminate insight for anybody in terms of IT and some of the cybersecurity uh, protocol and hygiene out there. So thank you, and I look forward to seeing you next time.